I want to ask you guys, hop over to the chat window and tell us where you are coming from today. We want to know, where in the world are you joining us? We have so many folks who have jumped in on this webinar. I'm here in Duluth, Minnesota, where it is foggy and trying to be summer. And Annette is in beautiful Tampa, Florida. Annette, how are things today in Tampa as people start telling us where they're joining us from?
Well, if you've ever visited Tampa toward what is known as our hotter season, it's on par with Hell's Kitchen down here. The humidity's not bad. That's actually what keeps me fresh. And the temperatures are already in the 90s, and we're just coming into the middle of the day. So it's gonna get hotter, y'all.
So good. It's getting hot. And we got people coming in from all over. We have Jean-Claude from Quebec, Canada. The chat is disabled. We got our first tech issue of the day, which will be so drop your thoughts into the chat window while we get that updated and the button clicked there. Let us know via the Q&A where you are coming from. Ben, you're a minute into the webinar and you're already asking, hey, where is this going to be recorded? I'm at work. I have to jump on a work call right now. Don't worry, Ben. We record all of these. We post them on our blog and have them on the website. So you won't miss all the goodies that Annette is going to drop, the wisdom that is going to be here. But we are 3 minutes in, and we got tons of folks here. Hello from Milwaukee, from Duluth, Minnesota, all the way from Seattle on the West Coast. We got folks Vancouver and Maine, so East and West Coast represented right now, and Quebec. So we're multilingual, multi-country, multi-region. Amsterdam. We got folks from all over. Woo, love it. Nick Olson from Traverse City, Michigan. Nick, I went there last summer.
Slovenia, welcome. Northern Ireland.
You guys, how fun. How fun that we have folks from all over. Annette, there's people still trickling in here, and we have a lot to get to today. Like
a ton.
We got a ton. And I think this is one of the more exciting conversations that I've been wanting to have for a long time. And so we're gonna sort of jump in as people are telling us where they're coming from. Good job, everybody already interacting. Welcome to another one of our Cedar and Stone webinar series where we are unpacking all the nuts and bolts of sauna as business. We are teaching folks all over the country, all over the world on how to turn those dreams, those experiences of sauna as culture and ritual into wellness businesses that are serving their communities. You guys are going to hear from Annette Scott in a minute. She's one of the premier purveyors of sauna throughout North America right now. I just want to say a couple of things. Team who's just joining us here, you're already doing it. We're asking you to interact the whole time. So this isn't a sit back and watch a YouTube video and sip your coffee. I want you to lean in. I want to hear questions. I want to hear comments. I want to hear everything from it. We want you in with us. This is just us around the coffee table together, okay? We have the power of digital connection. So we're going to give you polls. We're going to give you questions to answer. We're going to hear your questions. We're going to respond to them as we go. And we're not going to save them till the end. We're going to do that throughout. So if you're like, hey, I have a question when I heard Annette say that one thing about how she operates her business, ask it right then. Don't wait till the end. Ask it right then, because we're going to make sure we try to filter through as many of them as we can. There's going to be a lot. We probably won't get to all of them. But that is what we're up to today. We are gonna dive in here, and Annette, I'm gonna toot your horn for a minute, okay? This is gonna be my like formal introduction to you. Is that all right?
Tootie toot away, brother.
So you guys, if you don't know Annette already, Annette Scott is the founder of Kodawari Studios and the Revivery. And those two businesses are serving specifically right now the Tampa, Florida area and eventually beyond. Annette is a wellness practitioner for decades and decades and is trained in more modalities than you know exist. And so we are just honored to have her here. There's going to be so much. And she's, not safe for work warning here, Ben, who's jumping on a work call. There might be some swears. I've heard Annette get salty every now and then. We'll try to keep it, PG-13 at least. But Annette, you have a really way with words to be honest with people and to engage them with the full vocabulary. What a joy to get to have you here today. Thanks for hanging out with us and being with us. We're so honored to have you here.
That's a great introduction. So while I can be children friendly or kid friendly, it's not my number one channel of operation. So just know that, especially as I get rolling, it's likely that I'm going to be very adult oriented. So with that said, thank you for the intro, and I'm excited to have the opportunity to talk to other people that want to dovetail living passionately with doing great business. And I think a lot of our conversation today will be illuminating for at what level can you marry your passion to the action items of coming into manifesting, if I could get the emphasis on the right syllables, manifesting your dream in a way that's concrete, actionable, and matters. Literally, I know that one of our objectives today is to dispel some of the myths around starting a sauna business in particular, but also helping people avoid what I call loosely the clusterfucks that create depression and waking up in the middle of the night thinking no. And so with that said, the snapshot of the last 20 odd years that have brought us now to this point is that I had a corporate job that came to a natural conclusion. It wasn't a good fit for me. I wasn't a good fit for it. And yet it still ran a 5-year course until that was abundantly clear. And then I decided to go to massage school. And interestingly enough, that's where I was very early on. That would have been 2002, introduced to contrast therapy, which is why it's so important to discuss this. There's some great stories, which are not appropriate for today's webinar, about how that also took place in a clothing-free area, which was a whole new run for me. And yet it is also where I absolutely fell in love with sauna and cold plunge and the application and the practice of being mindful, developing resiliency, taking care of oneself. And so my contrast practice, sauna and cold plunge practice, started in 2002. I'll fast forward through a couple things. Like, I've helped 60 odd women give birth. I'm a yoga teacher. I'm a personal trainer. I'm an aromatherapist, and I'm a sauna enthusiast. I'm a cold plunge enthusiast. I am not a fan of the idea of biohacking because I think that there are practical, applicable, everyday behaviors that aren't hacks. They're just intelligent actions that add up to vitality and the ability to give more of the authentic self to the world. With that being said, I bought my first house, only house so far, in 2010. And the first action that I did was build a sauna and put solar on my roof. Those two things came together as an investment in my living and my giving away my light. So that was 2010, 2011. Coming into the pandemic, I had already started to think about, how do I share the love that I have for sauna and cold plunge with my community? And I started a conversation, interestingly enough, with a very close friend of mine who has a house on the river up in nowhere land in the middle of Florida. And we started talking about building a sauna on site. And because there's a lot of flooding, she had a pretty strong reaction that caught me off guard. She was like, you better fucking build something that you can take with you when you leave. And this is a little tiny petite lady. And so I was like, that's a lot of heat. And as a result, I ended up speaking to Justin, and we designed the first, I'm going to be bold and say I co-designed it. You want to know why I can say I co-designed it? Because I was like, can I have a skylight? And he was like, yeah. We can do that. We'll do a skylight. What a novel idea. Luckily for me, that co-design came to us in 2021 in May. And I just want to keep this brief, but I pulled it into the parking lot of Kodawari next to a fucking dumpster. And this is literally the story. I started with 3 classes. I had a Wednesday night and 2 Friday days. And that was May of 2021. Today, I have the mobile sauna in the parking lot, an inside sauna that I built a room. I retrofitted a room. I have cold plunges that I'm investigating leveling up yet again. So there's a conversation to be had in this setting about how you might decide on one thing and level up to something else and potentially something else. And we need to have the conversation when to know enough is enough, because you got to be able to balance living that giving awayness, the passion, the excitement. Some of that means hard, concrete conversations about organization and investment. And yet, let me bring us back to Wednesday, Friday, 3 classes on the schedule. Today at Kodawari, we run 11 or 12 sessions a day, 6 days a week, with 5 on Saturday, so that we can have Saturday afternoons for special events. And what started as essentially probably maybe $1,000+ a month in terms of income, just to be very transparent, is now reoccurring revenue monthly is somewhere around $50,000+, and non-reoccurring runs the gamut between $7,000 and $12,000. So that's a $70,000 reoccurring revenue stream inside my business that, if you do the math, sorry, hang on. And if you're like me, you have one of these old mother humpers right next to you. So let's see, 70 times 12 is $840,000 a year. That ain't bad, y'all. Now, that doesn't address, that's top line, not bottom line. So what's coming through the door, don't get your knickers in a twist just yet, because a whole bunch of fucking money goes out the door. With that being said, I'm still deeply passionate, motivated, wake up every day. I still have a sauna in my own backyard. I have a cold plunge in my own backyard, and I use that, and I lead sauna at the studio, and I got 65 people working with me. And so there's the snapshot of what happened here in Florida in the park, what started in the parking lot next to a dumpster and has been graduating and evolving since 2021. And that's probably about as much as you need to hear at this moment from me, so that we can move into more in-depth conversation about what matters to you.
So we are 14 minutes in here, and I want everybody to just note Annette is here because not just she's been able to be successful with those kind of numbers, but also she's been able to do this practice for over 20 years. So we're actually going to get into today some numbers. We are going to get into multiple different business models, which Annette has already sort of climbed the ladder of. And we're going to talk about how those things actually function and work. And we're going to ask you, as the entrepreneur or as the leader, who do you have to be and become to run those different types of businesses? So we're going to get into the weeds here. Whenever I'm with Annette, we sort of like immediately also get deep right away. And so at the beginning of this, I just really want you to hear that this is not the get rich quick scheme. This is not the Annette discovered this 2 years ago on Instagram because somebody was cold plunging.
No.
We're actually looking at this right now from a deeper, wider, and more meaningful experience of how to impact communities. And as savvy business owners like Annette, we care about making sure those numbers actually do cash flow so that things can be healthy and we can serve more people.
So I
Annette,
have three.
I know you have so much. We need to do one other thing. We need to hear who the heck is in the room with us right now by clicking a poll button. Okay. So up on your screen, you are going to get a poll. We want to know, in what way are you interested in the business of sauna? And I want you to click in there. You're going to get one choice. So choose the one that sort of most identifies you. Are you just an enthusiast? You love this? Is this something where I'm thinking about starting a business related to sauna? You might be already running one, or you potentially have run other businesses. You're kind of that serial entrepreneur where you've done a whole bunch of business like this, and you're saying, how do I do this already? Annette had already had multiple businesses and a wellness studio where sauna became sort of a modality to bolt on. And I think that's a really interesting way to look at this. So we're going to give that a little bit more time. We're going to keep hearing from folks. We have a 79% of the people, 80% of the people have clicked the button. We'll get a few more in there. And thank you, everybody. We've already seen some questions coming in. I want to highlight to folks, just to make it a little easier on us, if you do have a question, let's pop those into the Q&A section. If you want to send resources, comments, jokes, or tell Annette to swear away like Andrew did a little bit ago, all that lives in the chat window, okay? So fun banter, and we'll be sending you resources over in the chat window. On the Q&A side, that's going to help Lindsay. On our tech side, just make sure we get all of those questions answered along the way. So let's stop sharing our poll. Let's close that out, and let's share the results really quick. And that I want you to see who is in the room right now. And we have some enthusiasts. We got some folks who are here that are just like, I love sauna. This is crazy what's happening in North America right now. We also have a whole bunch of people, the majority, 65% of the people are thinking about starting a sauna related business. So super excited that you're here. I think this is going to be worth its weight in gold in terms of the content we're going to provide to you. And again, it's all free, like whatever. We want to be resourcing you to make sure this works. We have some folks who are currently running a business. Annette, like you and I, we got 18% of the people who are already doing that. We're going to talk a little bit about how you scale up, how you invest, how you become efficient in those things, and think about what could be next for that. And then we got some of those serial entrepreneurs, those folks thinking about it, maybe some investors in the room. I think you're going to find out as we open up another couple pages here in the discussion, there's some projects that are also really big happening in North America. And so we're going to look up the ladder all the way to some big projects that we're going to highlight, that it isn't just guerrilla warfare and scrappy upstarts right now that are happening. We have a whole lot of additional stuff happening. So you guys, thanks for being here. What a joy. Annette, you've already dove into your story a little bit. I love the fact that you have a history of this practice. You did it for decades before opening the doors. Talk to me about this real quick, just before we kind of move to the next section. We're going to show some slides and do some things. Tell me, what was that moment where you said, hey, or maybe it's a lot of moments where you said, hey, I do need to start providing this to my community. I do need to take sauna and cold plunge in a more public or a more accessible way to my community. What helped you get from, I do this in my backyard, to I have that conversation with a friend, and then, yep, let's pull the trigger. Let's invest in the material to do that. What really got you there?
So initially, as I said, I came to you with needing a mobile unit because I believed I was going to tack this on to retreats. It was going to be something, another level of how do you take care of yourself? How do you restore? How do you power up for when you return to life, regular life? Because in my mind, when I lead retreats, yes, it's a pause and a shift, and yet that pause and shift has to inform going back into what you do with greater efficiency, effectiveness, and passion. And so for me, I was like, you know, what's a very simple thought process. I wanted to share something that does that for me. Sauna and cold plunge was a way for me to take excellent care of myself in a very effective time frame, 45 minutes to an hour. And I could go on ad nauseum about all the things that can come in alongside the bare bone practice of here's the heat, here's the cold. I'll do a really quick snippet again out of respect for our time. You could body brush. You can salt scrub. You can put face masks on. You can do breath work. You can meditate. You can do communal sharing. You can do body tapping. You can improve a sense of it, mindfulness. Essentially, alongside the biopsychosocial effect of being in that space, all of it will add up to, if you care and you pay attention, can add up to more presence. And I'm going to say that with this face, this scrunchy face, because for a lot of people, that's performance. And I'm of the opinion that you can only perform when you're really present, when you really are embodied, healthy and healing and active and engaged. And the way to do that is to have a nervous system that's regulated by self-love and self-care. That sounds fuzzy, and yet self-love and self-care means that I can hold in my mind a long view about what actions I need to take today, tomorrow, a month, 3 months, a quarter, half a year, a 5-year plan. You're not going to do that if you're in pain and you're fucking lonely. You just can't. So self-care is so critical to the ability to have a long view. Now, there's my little diatribe about, I thought I'll add this incredible, impactful self-care program into my retreats. I need that to be mobile. I came to you and I thought, I'm going to park it in the parking lot and I might as well see if anybody will join me a couple times a week. And then I literally had standing, waiting lists, people that wanted to get in, couldn't get in. Okay, so I added another class, that got full. I added another class, that got full. I added another day with classes, that got full. And that just kept happening until I reached a critical point where I'm like, now I need truly, I'm at a space where having a second sauna is somewhat of an imperative so that I can service the multiple channels of business that I'm now developing, which includes some corporate gathering, some private events, life events where people don't want to get, and again, sorry to be so frank about it, but a lot of people are deciding that at certain critical timeframes, like a birthday or a groom's party, or they're like, we don't want to get all fucked up. We want to be with one another, and we don't want to have to lean solely on booze, drugs, and hookers to have it be memorable, right? And so now I'm in a place where, very gratefully and in a hashtag blessed way, I'm recognizing that it really isn't about, to some degree, it isn't about my plan. It's about the plan for healing and making us more whole and more present and less distracted, depressed, isolated, and lonely. It still requires a goddamn business plan, y'all. So this thing is, to try to be more succinct, I thought this works for me. It's powerful. Let's put it out there and see if it resonates with my community. And it did. And it's been a wild ass ride and not always comfy either. So I do not want to sugarcoat this. And yet it is, if you ask, has it been worth it? Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and I think in that combination of you saying, hey, you as the owner, the starter, the entrepreneur needs to care for yourself just as much as you need to care for your business plan. And let's run those numbers ahead of time to manage the risk and to execute so the thing can grow. Team who's just joining along, amazing questions coming in. We are going to get to some of them, and you're already asking questions that we're sort of anticipating along the way. We're gonna do a little bit of a screen share here. I want you to see where we're going, and we're gonna unpack some of the business models that we are seeing be successful in North America right now. So Annette, I'm gonna run through a few of these. Feel free to comment as we go. But you guys, what's happening right now, this is unlike Europe, because Europe has millennia of tradition around some of these things. They're definitely, it's more in the culture, in the water. We're talking about a North American context. I also want to say to our Canadian friends, you guys know how to rest better than we Americans do. So there's also in Canada some interesting things happening, and I would say a lot more built out, larger Nordic spas. And we're going to look at sort of that Canadian a little bit and zoom in also on the American market for what's happening. Here's some things we're seeing. It looks super different depending on where you are. We're seeing everything from mobile rentals, like this guy right here pulling a sauna with bikes on it, to floating saunas in harbors and watersides. We are seeing things paired with natural cold plunge and accessible cold plunge. Annette has talked a lot about, and we can get into the weeds on this a little bit later, on how hard it is to do cold plunge in Tampa, Florida, where sun is one of those resources that is quite abundant. So we'll talk about that operationally. We see folks that are putting saunas onto hotels and partnering with other businesses. We're seeing nature retreats and experiences that are in the woods that are sort of the destination to go find, that create their own energy that you go get. And we are going to unpack that in this lovely chart that is packed full of information. Annette, are you ready to go? Are you ready to
I
like
am.
dive into this?
Yep.
So everybody who's here, we're going to be on some small Zoom screens. Feel free to move us, move our faces if you want to get every bit of this here. But what we've done is we've kind of distilled what we keep seeing throughout the US right now. And we're going to unpack both costs, where we see those happening, how the labor and operations happen for those, what that could look like for top line revenue potential, and how long it's actually going to take to get it going, and what are some of the roadblocks there. So we're going to talk through this for a little bit. As we do, this is going to be another moment to ask questions along the way. Right after we're done with this, we're going to ask a poll to see where you fit in here. And then we're also going to answer a bunch of those questions coming in. So Annette, you winsomely tell the story of turning the corner of your parking lot by the dumpsters into a profit center. That was you beginning with this bottom tier here, this rental unit delivered mobile sauna experience. And that was initially sort of built around those events and pop-up events. Right now, we see those often coming in sort of at the lowest tier of investment. And also, if we go over, oftentimes the lowest tier of top line revenue potential, because it's very pop-up oriented. It's very sort of one-off. It's not continuous. And there's lots of labor behind it. It's hard to do. Annette, when you think about kind of how those work and what you were dreaming about and what you've seen, let's talk a little bit about those kind of bottom two right there, in terms of it. Now, I want to differentiate one thing. We do have friends and team members and partners who are using sauna as a rental unit to be delivered. This is sauna as a amenity that gets dropped off in people's driveways and at their parties. And Annette, you were sort of dreaming of, hey, we're actually having the gathering. We're just going to bring it there. That delivery model, I think the big thing around that is you really want to look at ease of access. You want to look at who's your market and are you actually able to get into their driveways and on their properties? We have a partner who tried mobile sauna delivery and it was really tough because he was in the mountains. And every driveway he delivered to wasn't very flat. And it began to be a pretty high labor, high workload, high delivery, and tons of work that for him, at the end of the day, it was a nice side gig, but it wasn't where he wanted to go as the business. I know we had a question coming in there around side gigs. I think these two are the most likely for kind of when you start thinking about this as a side gig as opposed to your full-time job. Annette, what would you add here in this pop-up events and rental units delivered kind of mobile sauna experiences?
It's captured in the chart, and yet it's worth mentioning. These are high labor. They're going to require a lot of what I would call grunt work. You don't need to be a neurosurgeon, and yet you have to have critical thinking skills and the ability to problem solve on the spot for everything that you just discussed. And this is also a great place to start to see, as a litmus, what is it that your community wants or needs. So I'm not going to poo-poo on either of these two things. And it's almost, again, like a stair stepping. So rental units, if you're just literally dropping them off, you got to keep in mind that you're going to need it, in all likelihood, a truck. You're going to need some sort of, or a driver with a truck. You'll want to have cold plunges. You got to figure out an ice delivery, or you leave that to the person that you're dropping the sauna off at. You know, there again, you can of course add in a menu of items. When you get to pop-ups, you're starting to think about, you have to coordinate with whomever the event coordinator is. What kind of space? Are you close enough to a water spigot? You know, again, there's some details here. Can the ice truck get to you where you are in the event? Because it's one thing to go in the day early and drop your unit. How does the ice get to you? And if you're in the South, down here in the good old Bible Belt, you got to figure out how to get the shit to where you is. And it's not always that easy. And these are great starting points. They're complex. It's just a level of complexity. And I think that they give you a great chance to see, like, is this, again, we're going to point to this later. I'm going to seed the thought now. Can you stay passionate about this business and what it does in the face of the complexity? Because it's not going to be not complex. It's going to be, where can you go to bed at night, wake up the next day? Because I can be honest and say, I wake up every day very hopeful, filled with optimism, ready to, wrestle the bear. And by 4:30, I'm thinking about kicking people in the baby maker. And I need to separate myself from people by 7:30. And by 9:30, I'm in bed. And that is a cadence that's driven by the complexity.
And I think let's talk about the strengths of these two models. You know, it's low startup. It can be high visibility, right?
Absolutely.
If you're a marketer, if you're a brand builder, it's like getting it into the public eye. There's some addressing those things there. It's also a lot quicker than some of these other models. These things can pop up. They can make happen. They can be, I would say, within a year-ish, by the time you're trying to get all those things happening. And on the technical side, and on MEP, Annette, you're in a lot of that right now.
Yep.
Mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and doing some big build outs. There's actually a lot less of those restrictions. Now, I did see a question in there. Somebody asked this, hey, can you do mobile sauna with wood-fired versus electric? What happens if we're in the Pacific Northwest with a burn ban season? These are all the absolute questions that should be asked, because they relate to labor and they relate to kind of getting these things done and making these things happen. They are not insignificant questions. Annette, you have a thought on, you have tons of thoughts on that. And we're going to move up the list here in a minute. So give us the thought on that, and then we're going to transition to our next tier.
This is going to sound like shameless promotion, and yet it needs to be said, even though of what I didn't mention early on, I did Cedar and Stone's business accelerator program as part of, I got the mobile unit and I could see that it was ramping up, and I think I was one of in the first cohort with y'all. And I know it's only gotten more intricate and complex so that it can answer these questions. So truly, I don't know that there's another course available, a business course available out in the wider world that allows this level of questions on this range to be answered. So if anybody is seriously thinking about it, this isn't, Justin didn't pay me for this. And yet some of the questions that I'm seeing come through the chat are going to only be answered fully in a setting like that. Or when you pay somebody a consultancy fee, it doesn't mean that you're not getting a good idea about the answers here. And yet I imagine that many of you are going to think, like, I need more. I can't get my specific question answered. So consider that, because and thank you. I think Cedar and Stone, we just popped it in there. It's worth getting your answers. It's a comparative to the fuck up cost. It's a great way to get your answers before you get it through the Department of Health or local code or get bumped off a piece of land that you bought for this, et cetera, et cetera. So that's my piece before we go to the next level, which I think is important.
Thank you, Annette. So good. And yeah, there's a lot of depth in all the questions that are being asked right here. As we go up the tier on this, up the ladder on this, Annette, I want to highlight this partnership model and residency amenities. We're looking at often under 500K, which to start a business is not uncommon. And what you're doing, how we understand this is you're partnering with another location, another business. This was one of the ways that Annette did it, where she parked it. She was thinking about it for mobile and events, but she actually put it right next to her studio. You know what's in her studio? Showers and bathrooms. And that just saved her a whole lot of investment. Now, you might see that model and not have the yoga studio next to it. You might not own that like Annette did, but you have businesses in town that need people and want people to be coming. And sort of in their area. And that's one that we've really done a lot. We've done that at multiple different resorts and hospitality partners over the years, where we bring the amenities to them, we operate them for them, and we work with a shared agreement to both win on something. It's going to take a little longer. We have there another additional 6 months expected, because to negotiate with a hospitality partner, with another business owner in town, you actually need time to do that. You need to build relationships with somebody else. What you get for that is the potential ability to lower your labor costs per person. Now, you're going to have a bigger staff, you're going to add more people, but you won't be the only person running it for 12 to 14 hours a day, and you can host more people. So we have our top line revenue potential there. Really, Annette, you're a great example of this, where it's, between that 100K to $1 million number of top line revenue, because you have all those things there. You have a staff to facilitate it. You've trained them, and you're not the only one leading Nordic sauna sessions at your studio. You have a team to do for you.
Absolutely.
Do you have any other thoughts there, Annette, on that partnership and residency amenities model?
Yeah, I'm actually going to point to just really simply one of the ways that you, Cedar and Stone, has had success in hosting sessions is that you have partnered with hotels. I believe you have gone to a couple different places and very successfully had that synergistic growth mindset, which is I can bring something to you that builds your business, and you can bring people to me that builds my business. And I think, again, when you are I was about to make a qualifier. Great business people look to find the win-win-win. The client wins, their partners win, they win. And so if I were to say anything, keep in mind, if you're looking for high traffic, high tourism, high sharing, you will benefit greatly to think, what does the other need as much as I need, and answer that question before you open your yapper. Because it doesn't really do you a lot of good to just roll up on somebody and be like, I see you have hundreds of people go through here a day and I need that kind of traffic for my business. Great. They know that already. So how do you bring them benefit would be the only thing that I would say from a business mindset. When you start to get to partnership models, nature retreats, tag-ons, all this, keep in mind you want to sell that you are bringing benefit to them as much as they are to you.
Absolutely. We're going to bump up the ladder here. And what I'm going to say is that partnership model, you're going to assume all the operational commitments, or many of them, the lion's share of them. And we are starting to get outside of now the above the line of this becoming a side gig, just so you know. So now we're bumping up a layer here. we're going to highlight Nature Retreat as a specific kind of business model we see. And a lot of time it's connected to Airbnb, hospitality, beautiful location, sometimes rural. And the labor of that is deferred because sometimes there's already staff there. So it can be maybe lower staff, but you're sort of tagging on an amenity to an existing business. And it's specifically geared towards beautiful location. This is Instagrammable moment. This is, I'm not going to run it all the time. There will be a cost associated with it. It can vary widely depending on where it goes. And I'm going to jump up one more here, and then Annette, you and I can kind of riff on it. Existing business and added sauna as amenity. Again, deferred labor, because some of these businesses, you experienced this where you brought a sauna in, you already had a front desk staff, you already had people back of house, you already had people who were trained as leaders in the community who could sort of dovetail in, and if they'd done yoga teacher training, maybe they could do sauna guide training. And so there's some wins here of adding it onto an existing business that you would then assume some of the labor or some of the operational capacities might be hosted in there. That's why these two are in there. We see them as a little bit different, and you're going to have to probably share the top line revenue. If you're partnering with somewhere else and they're going to provide a lot of labor to the option, you're going to have to say, hey, I'm not going to make the lion's share of the money on this kind of thing. Annette, do you want to highlight anything specific to those two? Because we're cruising on time. I want to get to questions, and we still got to talk about the big options coming up. So any other notes on these two in the middle?
I think you're doing a great job of outlining, the progressive need for someone other than you. You as the visionary, it doesn't mean that you won't be exempted from having to deal with the details, quite possibly the opposite. And yet, I'm going to double back on, let's know where enough for you is. And that's a question of mental, emotional, spiritual, intellectual, relational, and physical health. Like those 5 things, which I often discuss as SPIRE: spiritual, physical, intellectual, relational, and emotional. You want to have a gauge. Am I up to this? And if you start to find yourself worn out every damn day before noon, we got to revisit this. And there's no shame in the game, and because I have 3 consultants to my business now, because I need outside eyes. I need outside education. If I level up, I've got to level up the kind of help I ask for. So don't ever think that it's got to be you and you alone. Don't be overly American. Don't be the ugly American that's like, I'm a goddamn cowboy. I can go get it my damn self. No, please learn how to, building a business is about the village, man. So there's me. Carry on.
It's such a good word, and it's such a good lead into what you need to have to go to the next step. Because I think a lot of people, as they do their startup, they feel a little bit at some point, especially as it grows, kind of a slave to the machine they've created. They're like, oh gosh, this thing is running and I have to work to keep it going. I have to work long days. Or now I'm like, my payroll's getting bigger. Like, these are real questions that you want to think about is, what's the vision? What's the long-term goal? We spend so much time, this and that, with our incubator and accelerator folks that we're consulting on what's your vision, because that actually matters for this. It really, really matters of vision and intention of where you're trying to go. Now, we just went with a lot of business models that involve low or some MEP, less permitting, less architectural design, less sign-offs, so that they can get started up sooner. Not none, not zero. You still need insurance. Please hear me. If you are running a business that has fire, heat, and actual humans going into it, you're going to need some insurance. And don't be the cowboy, like Annette said, to not assume that. Now, once we go these 2 stairs up to studios and bathhouses, all of these things get more real. And you'll see that your top line revenue potential also gets more real, but you're adding a much more significant number of people through the space. You're really creating facilities to host lots and lots of people. Annette, we have that kind of studio model, which is very similar to your yoga studio. You're sort of
Yeah.
often looking at under 3,000 square feet. It's probably retail infill. You probably don't own the building. You probably are leasing a space from a landlord who owns a building in your town, in your city, in your area. And oftentimes those build outs, you're going to look at something like 300K to 2 million, depending on how much you're going to put into it, how big it is. We tend to see them urban and suburban, and we tend to have a staff that is really making sure that thing operates well. Annette, what are you seeing in terms of that model? And this is a chance, I think, to really toot your horn a little bit on what Revivery is looking at too, because you're looking at another step here to go from your business to then franchising out this concept in other parts of the country.
So I'm at this stage because of the intensity of what's happening for all of us as sauna and cold plunge comes into more of the mainstream. Just like once upon a time, yoga was just for a very narrow niche of freaks, until suddenly those freaks were the steady people in the room. Those freaks were the healthy people in the room. We will see, I believe, sauna and cold plunge continue to be sought after, and people will be looking for it. Thereby, the simple economics of supply and demand are going to pull this thing into existence. So for those of us that are in this conversation, congratulations. You're on the beginning of what I absolutely believe is a tsunami of interest. And I believe we're being asked to start this, let's get very tree huggy, healing journey. We're going to go on a healing journey. And it's, again, just because it's got some nice, it's done in some really approachable font doesn't mean that it's not going to be a fuck ton of work and difficult. It is, and we can do it. And when we get to studio and bathhouse level, now you also have to start to work in, as I have, things like CAC, client acquisition cost, LTV. Not only that one operates twice, that's loan to value. What kind of value does your house have, your car have, the things you have? Because you're going to leverage that shit to get the money that you need to do the work to get that urban suburban location staffed and outfitted. I am in the process at Revivery. By the way, it's Revivery, so REVIVERY.co, because of course some other mother humper took .com, but .co. So Revivery.co, right now we're in the process. We're about to open at either Q4 of this year or Q1 of 2025. We'll open that first new standalone concept. It'll be just sauna and cold plunge. And the objective right now is to definitely continue to roll it up into a larger out in the world, potentially franchisable deal that, talk to me in a year. I'll sell you a franchise because I've got the federal disclosure documents on the way, which is another level up in terms of business. When you get to Bathhouse, now Justin's going to share it. I'll let him do it. And yet, honestly, you're looking at acreage, MEP, all the tech, lots of LTV, loan to value, lots of leveraging people who you blow, where you do it, all the things. And we start to see, big impacts and big teams and big ideas and lots of people leaning into the same objective to get the group, the community, the we, not the me. It's not me anymore. It can't be, unless you're a narcissist and Elon Musk is one of your best friends.
And I think there, as we jump up one tier, really what you're looking at is developing a full-fledged business that all the core operational needs of a business are done on your team, where your staff tends to be then multi-tiered and your labor is very skilled, right? And that your team is, hey, you got, you got you guiding it, you got some operational leaders, and you got a lot of staff that are turning the cranks and making it happen and folding the towels. You know, you probably don't have a full-time marketing person yet, right? That's just dedicated to your marketing strategy. I think you start to go, but once you start to get at this level, you start asking, hey, maybe we should do that.
Yeah, I have someone on salary that is social media and marketing, and the poor woman wears 4 other hats as well, because I'm still honestly that small that I can't pay. And she's probably underpaid. Don't tell her. Don't tell her. But, you know, like I've got to cap what our payroll looks like in order to generate the litmus, which is profit, to take that loan to value to go do the next step.
So you guys, we are going to send this out so that you have a snapshot here if you haven't already screenshotted it yet. I think this is the worth the price of admission and some. I know this is a free webinar, but this is what we're seeing in the US. We're actually seeing every one of these models being moved forward, and we're seeing people walk up this ladder of models regularly all the way, and I'm not joking about this, to that $20 million bathhouse level. There are examples of that, of those kinds of businesses being developed in urban areas and opened in urban areas so that these things can go, and you gain economies of scale and all these things to figure out how to get cold water clean for humans and run hundreds of bodies in there. It's a lot easier to keep bigger bodies of water clean than little bodies of water. So just in a very simple terms, that's what we keep seeing. I'm going to come back here, big screens. Here we are. Annette and I are back. There's so many awesome questions. There's so many good comments happening. We're going to spend the rest of our time and we're going to land on some of that emotional, mission-driven EQ to make all this happen. Annette, I want to talk a little bit here. Let's go through a few of these things, but you know, people are asking a little bit about labor. How do I get this done? How do I train my people? Could you just speak for a few? I know we've talked about it already, but how do you get the right people? How do you train them and do that short because we're running low on time?
Hire slowly, fire fast. It's a pain in the ass, and yet be really clear with what kind of person you want in what seat. Clarify the job description. Again, at least for me, this is tedious. I'm like, I want them to be smart. Well, duh. And what do you want them to be smart at? What do you want them to be able to accomplish in a given day? And what will they add to the community in a given year? So hire slow, fire fast. It's very hard. I find this hard because I hate firing people. And yet the only way to avoid consistently firing is consistently hiring the right people, and you vet them on the front end.
Love it.
That's the synopsis.
Love it. I think there's some people asking questions related to sort of capacity, right? And sort of how many seats you need to make this happen. And Annette, I know you talked earlier about like just high volume. How do you get a lot of people going through there? I do want to say, you know, sauna isn't group fitness exactly, but it dovetails well. And your biggest limiter is how much space do you have on seats, on benches? How many people you'd like to squeeze in there? Annette and I have different views because our different clienteles of how many people actually fit into a sauna. I look at something because I build it and I say, oh, that's a nice cozy 6, maybe 8. And that says, I bet I could squeeze 15 to 17 in there.
Oh, I
And,
don't say squeeze. I just say we're putting fucking 15 people in that bitch. That's what I say. And you and I roll around on the ground like 2 kittens. And
but
it's fun.
it's what I want to highlight for you guys crunching numbers and running pro formas is, you know, any business should be thinking about what's the core operating principle for their business. How many, if you're a restaurant, how many tables do you have? And how many dishes can your kitchen get out in a certain amount of time? And it's the same kind of numbers here. A lot more of these models get a lot better once you get beyond one little 6-person sauna. They just do. There's the operational scale of those things. And there's a lot more labor with them. So absolutely be kind of thinking about those things and playing with those things. I think for those startup phases, you're often going to be in a number that's below 10. Maybe you can squeeze in 12 or 15, depending on the space, but you're often in that. Once you get into the medium tiers of that, you're looking at somewhere to hosting 10 to 30 people. And then once you get into those bigger studios and larger bathhouses and spaces, you're just going to be able to hold a lot more people, 40, 50 people at a time per hour. You're going to have a lot more space for them, which allows you to do a lot more revenue, but you have to have a lot more behind it. And it takes a lot to get that. So there's kind of a little deep dive there. Annette, is there another question you're seeing that is just jumping out to you around all of this?
Well, I'm seeing this in the chat, and it should go into the Q&A because I can co-commit with Cedar and Stone to, especially if we have everybody's email, I'll send back out a brief answer to any question that we don't get done today. You know, and I say brief because, of course, if it's more than 15 minutes, guess who's gonna charge you? But I think one of the questions that I see is around client records management and or booking software. So this becomes, when you get bigger than that 6, a critical piece of your business. You want something that is a 3-click ease. Hi, my name is, I'm looking for, I'm booked into. Something as simple as that. That could be Acuity. That could be, I'm not a fan of MindBody because I think they're like the Walmart of fitness. There's Mariana Tech, there's Walla, there's Moments,
we could keep going for a while.
Yeah. So client records management and booking software is going to be a critical piece. And someone asked, like, how much of a gap between sessions? At Kodawari, it's 15 minutes. Everything's on an hour and then 15 minutes later, it starts. So we start at 6 in the morning. We have a 7:15. We have an 8:30. You get the rhythm. We do take a break in the middle of the day. All of this is to say that client records management, what you get for booking software when you get a little bigger than a pop-up event where you got one person there with maybe a clipboard, you can use that. Pencils still work in this world. They're less effective than some things. However, then you have to also understand, do you have Wi-Fi, et cetera, et cetera. Everything comes with a cost to benefit ratio. And you got to run those cost to benefit ratios as you start to increase your complexity. There are some other great questions, and I think we wanted to sign off, Justin, with, you know, just be clear with what's known as your BHAG. What is your big, hairy ass goal? What's your mission? What's your vision? What are your values? And you better fucking write in your personal values somewhere on a piece of paper to make sure that one doesn't cap the other. Like, if your mission vision caps all of your personal values, in other words, crushes it, lays on top of it, and squeezes the life out of it, your unique offering to this world dies there too. So we have to have room for both. I have a business, mission, vision, value, ethics. How do I get the job done? You need to also be cognizant that you have separate from your business. We cannot singularly define ourselves by our work. Our meaningful connections are of great value. So is what we put out into the world. Don't short shrift one or the other, right? It's hard. That's really hard. And there will be time for sacrifice, and there is an opportunity also to reap what you sow. So I'm excited about business. I'm still excited. If I find a long run of months on months on months where I'm like, I just want to fuck, I can taste the gunmetal. I'm thinking about a big ditch where I can put a little padding in and go there and stay there. We got to revise. We got to revise. So I just, my parting thought is I'm, I feel so grateful to have you ask all these questions. We'll answer what we can from what you put in the Q&A. And thank you for your time. Thank you for listening. Thank you for caring. Thank you for getting ready to give your gift to the world. It matters. You matter. We together matter. So thanks for gathering.
Thank you so much, Annette. You've given more value than we could even hold in the hour around this. And if you guys want more of this kind of talk, of time with Annette, and to get into a bunch of these questions, I mean, we have 20 plus questions in here that are deep and meaningful, from gross profit and net profit to how to get your investors to how to get your insurance. I mean, all of those things are very real, very questions. I want to invite you, check out our Sauna Business Accelerator. We are actually unpacking those with businesses every month with on-demand coursework, small group coaching, and built-in accountability to what Annette said, to make this gift you have to give to the world actually real. I want to highlight that as much as I can, that we believe in this thing more than just business. We really believe in it as it is a thing that the world needs right now. Now, we are also going to come in, and I just want to highlight this for everybody. We are going to do another one of these events in July. That's going to be July 10th. And we're going to look at these big spaces. We're going to look at how you navigate the most common roadblocks of building a bathhouse. A lot of the work here is going to be true for even some of these smaller models, but we're going to look at the big ones. We're going to talk with Leo Conan, who's the co-founder, design director of World Spa in Brooklyn. If you can build a 50,000 square foot bathhouse in New York City, you've just got over 1,000 hurdles and 1,000 challenges. We're going to talk to Leo and make sure you guys get all the value for that. Sign up today for that. The link is in the chat. The link is on our website right here. And again, Annette, thank you so much. We have people chatting in saying that you're an inspiration, Annette, and they want to be on the journey with you, and people inviting you to go visit them in Vancouver, Washington.
I'm coming.
So you guys, thank you so much for your time. We want to always leave you wanting more on these, and we are having us land the plane fast because we would love to hang out for more hours on this. We hope to see you on the next one. And Annette, thank you again. And thank you for everybody joining us for another one of these webinars. We'll see you soon.
Bye, y'all.